Oh, did that soundbite define the news curb for the last several days? All right, there's substance in the suspension of Gene Smith for 2 weeks, and well, he's still going to be able to coach them at practice with 3 games for Urban Meyer. And then there's the impression, what you take away. What's your takeaway?
So for most of these stories, and I say these stories because we all know what we mean by these stories, I've often approached it from a perspective of idealism. Like, what do I wish the response was of our higher education institutions, and then compare that against what's actually been done. It seems at this point there should be an acceptance that most of these programs are going to act in a practical manner and not in an idealistic manner. So then I'm trying to think and process, what else is at play here? What other perspective can we talk about that actually leads to the decision like what Ohio State made? And the only thing I think that I don't hear enough people talking about is the actual perspective of what the media does when it covers these cases, and why, if I'm Ohio State, I'm like, look, why be idealistic when we can be practical? And here's what I mean, in that our job is supposed to be like the watchdog, and we're supposed to hold people accountable. And yet, if I'm the Ohio State Board of Trustees, I'm thinking to myself, how long is the news media as the watchdog really going to stick around? So are we going to, A, crave and fall to the pressure of, all right, I'm going to fire my coach and send my program into disarray to satisfy the outrage, or practically, this is going to go away, and in 3 months, nobody's going to be asking Urban Meyer about this? Because does anyone talk about Matt Patricia right now? No, nothing. No. So if I'm Ohio State, if I'm the Board of Trustees, am I going to be idealistic or am I going to be practical?
But if that's their mindset, at the very least, even if you think, oh, the media eventually is going to go away, you had 12 hours in that room for someone to say, you know, Urban, you're going to be asked about the ex-wife here, Courtney Smith. Can we work with you on your response? Could you find a more tone-deaf, a more egregious response, a more unempathetic response than that? They had time to get that much right. They didn't even come close.
No, and you know, that was obviously troubling, and it was surprising as well, as you suggest, because you would think that if you can't find genuine contrition or sympathy, you can at least find a way to manufacture it before you're going to be asked the question. But you know, it's almost like going back to what happened at Big Ten Media Days, where Urban Meyer doesn't seem to even anticipate what is coming.
And did not deliberately lie. I didn't know you could modify the word lie, frankly, Mary Jo Smith, but apparently you can.
You know, there are a lot of things here that are, as we're saying, troubling. I mean, one of them is the whole idea of this punishment being 3 games. You know, he's not getting paid for 3 games. You know, this is not, if you want to send a message about punishing somebody, a coach, it's not the beginning of the season. You know, make it the end of the season. You know, there's no rule against making it the end of the season, you know, or make it half the season. Make it more significant games. Don't let them go to practice. Like, you know, I'm not saying necessarily that Urban Meyer should be fired, or that he should be suspended for 2 years, or anything like that. I mean, we could have a discussion about what is the appropriate punishment in a situation such as this, but clearly this is kind of a mock punishment. Right. And that's just bogus.
Well, it's a slap on the wrist. But, you know, Urban Meyer's response at that press conference to me was emblematic of the school that he works for. Because we in the media have spent so much time talking about his response, talking about Gene Smith, and we spend very little time talking about the Board of Trustees, the very group that had the responsibility for making the decision here. And what I think is so interesting is you read this report, and it lists one way after another in which he violated his contract in a way that he could be terminated for cause. But you were talking about practicality. Well, you do that, then you got to pay him a whole bunch of money because he's going to sue you, and it's going to bring your program into disrepute.
You've got to want to fire him.
Yes.
Which they don't want to do.
But even more than that, what this all comes down to for me is this Board of Trustees looked at this and said, what's more important? The most important guy in Ohio, this football program, or the so-called values we live by at our school? Honesty, respect for women, respect for abuse survivors, and they made their choice. I'm also not saying he should have been fired. I'm saying all of this was lip service given to we care about these values. And in the end of the day, it's not just Urban Meyer. It's the school and the people who run it who thought all that came second to football.
And we had the typical pivot for 2018, blame the media. It's our fault. There is Zach Smith on Instagram or Twitter saying they gave into the media backlash. Rex Elliott, the attorney for Gene Smith, saying these men were publicly flogged, irresponsible media. The country was lathered into a frenzy, and these are his words. Ohio State appeased a lynch mob, talking about national public opinion. Blame the media. It's our fault.
Yeah.
When it comes to these stories, though, like Ryan's talking about, clearly there is this goal of idealism that we want the place where our kids are going to get a higher education to embody certain values. And yet, if we go back as far back as I'm willing to go back, which is like my college career, because I don't know the pure history of everything that happened before, nobody is living up to those ideals.
You're right, Kate. Right. And I mean, at this point, frankly, it's like Casablanca. I mean, we're shocked that there's a disassociation between major revenue-generating athletic teams at major universities and the moral compass and educational missions.
Your $100 million in revenue, sir. Here it is. So I'm going to hand it to you right now.
Come on, who are we kidding?
But then let's call it like we see it. When they're talking about their values are honesty and respect for students and other people associated with the program, let's just say we don't believe that.
The values, the daily value of the endowment. I will take another one of our colleagues, Greg Amonte, who is a producer, an Emmy Award-winning producer who produced the Emmy Award-winning feature earlier this year for E60 on the Syrian national soccer team. Greg has traveled the earth for this country, and 31 minutes into the 33-minute press conference in Columbus the other night, asked the question that defined the news cycle.
What message do you have for Courtney Smith?
Well, I have a message for everyone involved in this. I'm sorry that we're in this situation. And I'm just sorry we're in this situation.
That's the Greg Amonte, I know, straightforward, neutral question, ask it, and the answer spoke volumes.